What's going on? Ryan Faulkner here, Set to Pace Triathlon. Doing a quick little Facebook Live because we're going to talk about the walk-run method or the run-walk method. However you want to do it, however you want to approach it. A lot of my athletes, especially kind of more in the mature category, over time, you just can't go out there and just hammer out the long runs like you necessarily could have done when you're young. I'm 43 nowadays and definitely cannot do the same thing that I did when I was 24, which was run a duathlon in the morning, play an outdoor soccer game, play an indoor soccer game, and then still do a strength training session on a Sunday. Can't really do that anymore. Or I could try and wouldn't be able to walk the next day. So it's going to be critical that either as you progress, or maybe you've had an injury, or athletes knee replacements, hip replacements, different just odds and ends that leads to they still want to do the sports, they still want to do long course endurance events, but the problem is you got to get through the run in order to complete and get to the finish line. If you're going to do 70.3 or Ironman races, it's still doable, but you got to have a good strategy, good tactic to get all the way through, do the training, and if you want it to be sustainable, not get injured over time. So that's why we're going to talk about doing the walk-run method. So it's a little bit different, especially if you just have a mentality of I'm just going to run the whole time, I'm not going to stop. Now that's not the best approach necessarily. There's tons of different things we can get into about long runs and everything, but specifically I want to talk about the walk-run method and kind of how it can help you out. So you could definitely you can succeed even you could have a good fast time. If you're younger and you don't have any issues, the walk-run method is perfectly acceptable, because if you time those runs, and we'll get into it, it could be good strategic points at aid stations to walk, get your nutrition, get your hydration, and keep running. So over time, it could actually lead to a more successful run, especially when you get into Ironman distance events. 26.2 miles is a long time out there, and if you have a good strategy to get to the finish line, the walk-run method could be a successful strategy for you. Some athletes do it different ways. They walk a mile, or they run a mile and walk a minute. They run 2 miles and walk 2 minutes. Just find a good strategy and pace that works for you. And again, I'll go back to maybe you're timing it with aid stations. So you need to do a little bit of course, investigation to find out, the ones you're racing. Typically, events try to go for every mile or so, mile and a half, to try to have aid stations on the run. At the time of this recording here in January of 2021, COVID is still an issue. So as races have been opening up, they've been doing less aid stations and more self-supported. So that might be less of an opportunity to time it with aid stations, but in a perfect world, the aid stations are about a mile apart. So if you time it to aid station, you get about your mile, you walk the aid station, get your nutrition, your hydration, do whatever you need to, and then you start running to the next aid station. So that could be a good strategy. But I've got people that'll run for 10 minutes and walk for a minute. They do it by mileage, they do it by time, or they do it by a combination. So kind of, spitball kind of what you want to do out there, and then go out and practice it in your training. So like one of my big points is the aid stations. So timing it, if you're set on, I'm going to run 10 minutes and I'm going to walk 1 minute, and then you're running past aid stations, and you're trying to get stuff in you, you're trying to get nutrition, hydration, and you're trying to do it on the run, it just doesn't work very well. So have a little bit of flexibility. So look at the course maps, look at whatever whatever they're dictating as far as how many aid stations you're going to have, how far they're spaced apart, how well they're going to be stocked, and what they're going to be stocked with. Make a strategy to say, okay, my race, it's looking like every 2 miles, they're going to have an aid station. So I'm going to do my runs every 2 miles, have a little walk break, and then run another 2 miles, walk break. Or, if you're going to run, okay, I'm going to run 10 or 15 minutes and then walk for a minute. Be prepared on race day. It's like it may be shorter, it may be longer, or maybe you try to go every 2 aid stations, and just one of the aid stations you run by, you get in a splash of water, Gatorade or something like that, and you keep moving to the next aid station. So every 2, work out your strategy. Maybe one aid station is just nutrition, and that's when you're walking, and nutrition, hydration, or the other aid station is just hydration. So you can jog a little bit and, crinkle your cup and take a drink and chuck your cup before you get past the aid station. So come up with a strategy if you intend to use the aid stations, because That is going to be key. They are your lifeline, especially when you get to mile 10 on the run. You're thinking at first, the first 10 miles, you're running along. It's like, I've got the strategy. I've got it down. I can skip the aid stations. And by mile 10, you're kind of looking back being like, I wish I would have timed it better because I'm running low on hydration, running low on nutrition. I wish I would have timed it better at the beginning. And then you're in a hole and you're going to spend the rest of the race trying to dig out of that hole. And it's not very fun. A lot of people end up walking late in the run anyway. You go out there and you feel great that first 10 miles, you get out of T2 and you're really jazzed up. So the first 5 or 6 miles, you've got that energy, you're riding high. Hit mile 10, starting to kind of wane a little bit. Probably by mile 13, 14, it's like, okay, life is really setting in. You're either dehydrated, you're out of energy, you're out of nutrition, your GI's acting up so you can't take anything in. So a lot of people are walking by that time anyway. So if you take the average time, compare it to the walk-run method, yeah, at the beginning, you may be a little bit slower pace than you normally would, but at the end, you know, when you're walking 14, 15, 16 minutes per mile versus 10 minutes per mile, 11 minutes per mile, 12 minutes per mile, or whatever you're doing with your walk-run method, it can make a difference if you average it out. Don't just look at the race as a whole. It's like beginning, you know, I can do 9-minute miles. I don't want to do 10 or 11-minute miles doing a walk-run method. But if you're doing 10-minute or 11-minute miles walk-run method at the end, where you would be walking 15 to 16 to 20 minutes per mile, over the long run, you're actually going to save time. And at the end, you're going to be in a better position. The last 2 to 3 miles, the last thing you want to do is look like death walking into the finish line. If you have a little bit of energy, maybe you could jog it in a little bit peppier those last 2 or 3 miles into the finish line and look a little bit better. So don't get all beat up and bent out of shape about, I don't like the slower paces and the slower minutes per mile. Look at it as a whole. It's a long, big, huge race. Don't just look at the first little part where it's like, I know I can do 8 minutes per mile and hold that steadily forever. It's like, it's not going to happen on race day. It's not going to happen to a full Ironman. You're not going to be able, unless you're out there training full time and that's your only job, unless you're a phenomenal, genetically gifted athlete, more than likely you're not going to be able to hold that entire race. There's a lot of other strategies out there. You know, the walk-run method is just one of them. There's different, strategies of how to pace a run and how to do other things so you can run the entire run. At some point, you probably will have to walk to get to an aid station, go to the bathroom, do something. So, get past, if it's a blow to the ego, say, I just, I'm not a true athlete if I have to walk on the run or something like that. It's not. I've walked several times on purpose, and just that's where I've been at the end of the race. In a 70.3 especially, I've had my best times, but I've walked at aid stations. I got my drinks, I was purposeful, walked, got the Gatorade, got the water, got the goo if I needed, got the nutrition or whatever, and at the end of the aid station, I ran. And you keep that discipline, run between the aid stations, walk the aid stations if you need to. Towards the end of the race, if you're feeling good, you can jog the last couple aid stations, get your hydration and everything, and then get you to the finish line. So I want you to get past that point, and if ego is kind of stopping you from thinking about it, and if you're going to use a walk-run strategy, make sure you're doing it in training, especially on your long run days. Make sure you're going out there and your easy days, your zone 2, your aerobic stuff, practice what you're going to do on race day, because you don't want to get the race day and be like, well, now I'm going to do walk-run method. And then you get totally jacked up at mile 10, you're dehydrated, your memory's a little fuzzy, your mind just isn't working right, and then it's just all goes to pot because it's not ingrained and built in from day one when you started your training plan. So now's the time. January, at the time of this recording, January 2021, we're going to be optimistic. Races are going to come back. Let's start it now. If you're doing only a 6-7 mile run, you're starting to get into it. Now's the time. Walk or run for 10 minutes. Walk one minute. Test out different ways and figure out kind of what works best for you and what you think is manageable, especially on race day, and go with it. Get you to the finish line. That's kind of my pep talk for today, for today's Facebook Live, and for my tips for triathlon. So hopefully you got something out of it. You got any questions, put them in the comments. I'll try to get back to you. Send me an email, send me a message, or anything you got. Questions, what you think you should do, and however else I can help you out. So with that, happy training, and we'll see you next time.